Hello, welcome everyone. On behalf of the IEC Academy, I am pleased to welcome you all to today's webinar discussion hosted in anticipation of International Women's Day, which will take place this coming Saturday. This year marks an important milestone for women's rights. Indeed, it's been 30 years since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, a landmark commitment to advancing women's rights and gender equality worldwide. Today's webinar discussion is titled Beijing+30, Opening Pathways for Women in Standardization. And it reflects IEC's commitment to fostering diversity and inclusion by highlighting the vital contributions of women in shaping international standards. Before we begin, allow me to share a few housekeeping reminders. This webinar will be recorded. We invite you to use the Q&A tool for any questions or comments you may have to our panelists. Questions will be answered live, and the webinar recording, as well as the Q&A document, will be sent by email to all registered participants after the webinar. Please note that no AI assistance or any other type of recording is allowed during this session. We're privileged to have Michelle Parcouda as our moderator. She is the co-convener of the ISO-IEC Joint Strategic Advisory Group on Gender Responsive Standards and a member of IEC's Diversity Advisory Committee. She is also the chair of the team of specialists on gender responsive standards at the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, UNECE. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Sigma. So the theme of this year's International Women's Day is right, equality, and empowerment for all women and girls. The theme is a call to action for equal rights, power, and opportunities for everyone, and in particular to ensure that women and girls are not left behind. It has been 30 years since 189 countries unanimously adopted the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action at the Fourth World Conference on Women convened by the United Nations. The document provides a blueprint for action that countries can take to achieve gender equality in critical areas of concern. However, despite these good intentions, progress has not been as rapid as we might hope. We are not on track to reach SDG 5 for gender equality by 2030. In fact, the World Economic Forum now estimates that at our current rate of progress, we will not achieve gender parity until 2158, 5 generations from now. UN Women and others have emphasized that achieving gender equality requires the reevaluation of the entire structure of society. Standards play an important role in this. In 2019, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe launched the Declaration for Gender Responsive Standards and Standards Development. The declaration acknowledges that women are underrepresented in the standards development process and that outcomes for men and women are not the same. A gender gap in standards means that the products and services we rely on daily can perpetuate gender inequality. Research by me and others has demonstrated that the lack of gender responsiveness in standards development has real consequences, that it puts women at greater risk of injury and death. There are now 86 signatories of the UNECE Declaration, including IEC. Signatories commit to take action to address the gender gap in standards and standards development, and I am happy to report that in the almost 6 years since the declaration was released, we are seeing progress. I am currently the chair of the team of specialists of gender responsive standards at the UNECE, as Sigma mentioned, also the co-convener of the JSTAG, and a member of the IEC's Diversity Advisory Committee. Do we really need all these groups working on gender responsive standards? I would say unequivocally yes. Remember, we're not expected to reach gender equality until 2158. So yes, we need everyone to take action, and we need coordinated action. I read an article recently that stated social progress is not inevitable. Gains in equality are hard fought. It will take deliberate, concerted action to ensure that standards are gender responsive. Gender responsive standards are essential to safeguard trust in the standardization system and ensure that everyone can benefit from the standards we use daily. I am very excited for this session today. We will explore the intersection of standards, mentorship, and the empowerment of women and girls in the context of Beijing+30. The panelists will also share their experience with governance, mentorship, participating on technical committees, and the Global Impact Fund. First, we will have a video message from Pratham Fraga, the Director of Membership, Affiliates, and Capacity Building at IEC.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to introduce this webinar, which promises to address the critical issue of women's representation within the IEC. whether it's in the governance, in the technical committees, in the conformity assessment systems, and even on the ground through initiatives like the IEC Global Impact Fund. Today, we are privileged to have an impressive panel of speakers who will share their own experiences and solutions for fostering inclusivity. There are so many facets to diversity, and the IEC has decided through its diversity statement to put particular attention on gender, geographical and stakeholder diversity. As the Secretary of the Diversity Advisory Committee, or DAC, I know how much effort goes into fostering more inclusive governance with the goal of cultivating systemic change and diversity of thought across the entire organisation. DAC is launching its guidance to help IEC members improve gender diversity in standards development work. And I'm really pleased we're shortly going to hear from Michelle Parcuda. As a member of DAC, Michelle led this initiative, so she will explain the guidelines and how they are expected to pave the way for meaningful change across the ecosystem. This year, International Women's Day is particularly special, as it marks 30 years since the adoption of the Beijing Declaration, a landmark commitment to gender equality. This milestone reminds us of the ongoing need to ensure that women are represented in all layers of standardization work. Let's strive to have women's voices better reflected in decisions and initiatives that directly impact their lives and livelihoods. I'm also immensely proud of the work accomplished by the IEC Global Impact Fund, which has had diversity as part of its DNA since its inception. With its first project in Kenya, we're driving progress for women and through women. It's fantastic that Esther is here today to discuss this important work. Finally, I'm thrilled that we have one of the 3 2024 young professional leaders, Fatoumata, on the panel with us today. The Young Professionals Programme has been instrumental in enhancing diversity at the IEC, and her perspective will bring the voice of the future to the discussion. On the eve of International Women's Day, I wish you all a productive and inspiring conversation. Let us take this opportunity to reflect on these important issues and explore how we can continue to advance diversity and inclusion through IEC work.
Thank you, Sigma, for sharing that, and thank you, Catherine. Really appreciate those remarks. So we will now have a bit of an introduction on the work that Catherine just mentioned, having to do with the guidance developed by the Diversity Advisory Committee. So I'll just give a bit of an overview of that in my capacity as a Diversity Advisory Committee member. So the Diversity Advisory Committee was established in 2022. DAC is intended to promote diversity in IEC governance committees. DAC proposes guidance to the IEC board for the selection of members to other bodies that report to the IEC board. In terms of diversity, as Catherine noted, we are focused on geographic, stakeholder category, and gender diversity. They are also identified as priority areas. Oh, and I went too far. Yeah, no, that's it. Those are also identified as priority areas for IEC. Perfect. So I won't go into this too much because Catherine already kind of covered this, but diversity is an important value for IEC. They recognize that diversity adds value, and there is a commitment to ensuring that we have diversity both in standards development, in conformity assessment, and in our governance work. So I really want to put the attention on here. As Catherine mentioned, the IEC Diversity Advisory Committee has developed guidance to improve the gender representation of our governance committees. So across IEC, women account for just 14% of technical and governance committee members. Clearly, there's room for improvement. And as noted in the guidance, gender diversity adds value. Last year, the Standards Council of Canada released new research on the impact of gender diversity on technical committees' performance. Each year at the Standards Council, our technical committees have to complete a report on their activities, to say what they've done, what they've accomplished, and how they think that they're adding value to Canada. And these reports are independently evaluated, and the implications of those reports are that they will have an impact on the funding that they receive. And so these committees are motivated to do well in these reports. what we wanted to do is we wanted to see if having women on technical committees would improve the quality of the work that's being done by these committees. And so we found that committees that had at least one woman on them outperformed those that did not have any women on them. And so what this tells us is that having women on the committees improves the performance of the committee. And importantly, we accounted for other factors that might influence performance. And so even taking that into account, we still found that there was a benefit of having women on committees. This is similar to other research in other fields that have demonstrated that diversity is good for performance. There's another side benefit. Research on product development has shown that when women participate in product development, the resulting products are more gender responsive. I think we can similarly expect that improving gender diversity will be good for committees overall and also help to ensure that the committees develop standards that are effective for all genders. The guidance highlights that national committees are essential to improving gender diversity, since it is through national committees that individuals participate on technical and governance committees. IEC will not improve gender diversity if national committees do not take action. So what can they do? First off, if you are not already, NCs need to be collecting data. We don't know if we're making progress if we don't track the gender of our participants. Once you know what representation looks like, it's possible to track progress and set goals. NCs may need to conduct targeted outreach, and the guidelines have some guidance for how they can do that. Importantly, once we go to the effort of attracting more women, it is really important that we retain them. And so NCs might need to take efforts to ensure that they are retaining these women, and they might need to adjust some of their activities accordingly. And again, the guidance provides recommendations on how to do that. The guidance is intended to offer practical advice and also be used by the various types of national committees that we have. I would encourage all of you to read the guidance and consider how you can apply it in your context. So now we are going to turn the time over to some of our participants here. And so we will now be we're now going to be talking about mentorship. So mentorship is an excellent tool to promote diversity. One-on-one mentoring can help to open doors and increase the representation of women, particularly in fields that are typically dominated by men. It not only empowers women to participate and contribute meaningfully at all levels, but it also breaks down barriers and fosters a culture of inclusion. We'll now hear from the 2024 Young Professional Leader, Fatoumata Sanguer, and she will be followed by her mentor, Damien Poix. Fatoumata?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. So my interest in standards started when my manager, who is also my mentor, asked me to look into the IEC 624 for free for its implementation in our department. And as a lawyer who wanted to work in cybersecurity domain, standards provided me with a framework and showed the way forward. And as a YP, so IEC young professional, what surprised me most was the collaborative nature of standard development. I was expecting a rigid and bureaucratic process, but I found instead a dynamic environment where diverse perspectives were valued. And also young professionals can make a meaningful contribution from day one. And that was comforting. And about the mentorship, my mentor helps me a lot for technical challenge. When I have some technical challenge, I reach out to him, and together, and sometimes with other colleagues, we held some meeting to discuss our understanding of standards and their interpretations within our organizations. And what I'm learning, I won't say I've learned, but what I'm learning from him is that he taught me and he's teaching me to trust in myself and to combine my legal and my also risk management skills to see beyond the technical aspects of standards and to develop a comprehensive vision for the implementation. So having him is very helpful. And also, while he helps me understand standards, he also encouraged me to challenge the implementation and to suggest some some ideas to facilitate or to make them more user friendly for someone who is not used to standard implementation. And to maybe to finish and to let him speak, I would like to emphasize on the crucial roles mentors play in building confidence and providing visibility to young in general and to young women specifically. They can open doors to leadership opportunities, and they can help create an inclusive environment where women's technical expertise is recognized and valued. And that's very important. And from my personal experience, having a mentor helps me to speak and gives me confidence to speak at conferences. And also, Damien encouraged me to participate in IEC Young Professional Program last year. And he also encouraged me to apply for leadership position, and I've been elected. So I think having a supportive mentor and having someone who creates a confident environment is very helpful. And thanks to the work we are doing together today, I'm also involved in standardization in our technical committee. So the mentorship relationship is really, the mentor-mentee relationship is really a way to open doors for young women. Maybe I will let Damien complete what I was saying.
Hi everybody. Thanks, Fatoumata, for explaining how we try to work. From my point of view, as a team leader and as a manager, I actually don't make any difference between whether a girl or man or whatever origin the people may have, because we are working on cybersecurity, which is pretty hard stuff, and we need all kind of skills to be able to do the job we have to do. So the problem is not being man or woman or whatever. The problem is only how do you deal with the job you have to do. And also in my company, in Enedis, it's a way we want to see things. And even though we're a very technical industrial company where, of course, I wouldn't say women are the majority, would be just totally false, but we try to improve, and the company is trying to improve the places for women. So it's not only my personal opinion, it's also the company encouraging to let the people take their place, whatever they are. I mean, that's not the problem. The problem is how they deal with the situation they have to deal with. And so that's what I tried to apply with Fatoumata, and she made a great deal of it. But I would do the same if Fatoumata was a man. I would just act the same way. That's not the point. So I'm pretty confused when she's saying to me that I'm feminist. I don't know. I haven't thought life that way. But if you consider putting on the same view women and men being feminist, then okay, I'm feminist. That's okay. But from my point of view, it's just kind of nonsense having to be feminist just to consider people on their skills more than on their origin or their gender. So that's my point of view. That's the way we try to work in my team and also in Enedis. And if ever it can encourage all places or teams to go that way, would be good. Because I mean, the Fatoumata is the example of when you encourage people, they can go much further than they thought they could go to. So let's go. I still have a minute.
Did you want to add anything else?
No, I'm okay.
So I was just going to agree with Fatima and say, Damien, you are a feminist. So the definition of a feminist is anyone who believes in equality for the sexes. And so generally, I think we would hope that everyone is a feminist. I know that sometimes people don't always identify themselves that way, but if we consider what the definition is, really, we got to hope that most of us are. So thank you both for your remarks. We will now talk about the application of standards. And people, oh, pardon me. So as previously noted, women are underrepresented in standards development, and there is need to take action to increase the representation of women. We will now hear from two women who will talk about their experience participating on technical committees. We will first hear from Lucy Finley, the Standardization and Regional Regulation Manager Pacific at Schneider Electric, and a member of TC23. And then we will hear from Chunlan Guo, a co-convener of IEC's Systems Committee on Smart Cities Joint Working Group. Lucy?
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, and I'm very honoured to be here sharing my thoughts and my experiences on my role in standardization, both locally here in the Pacific Zone and also internationally. You are correct. There is a significant underrepresentation of women, not just in standardization. The underrepresentation of women extends across the entire electrical sector. Earlier today, I participated in another panel where we discussed some of the challenges that we're facing in increasing female participation within the electrical sector in Australia. There are some challenges that are unique to the electrical sector, particularly as a sector that has and still remains highly dominated by men. However, the sector is also facing common societal headwinds. To address the issue of female participation in standardization, we must look further than just standardization and further than just female participation. We must ensure that everybody who has a stake in the outcome is able to participate in a manner that ensures their voice is heard. Because if we don't bring everyone along on the journey, we will not bring anyone along. The process of standardization requires that we engage with people that hold different views and positions from those that we as individuals, as organizations, and as nations hold so dearly. In doing so, we must spend more time attempting to genuinely understand each other, our differences, and why those differences exist. If we do not understand what motivates each other, we will never reach that golden aim of consensus. In my role at Schneider Electric, I lead our contributions to standardization in a region of the world that we refer to as the Pacific Zone. Within this region, there are several small island nations, some of which are facing a terminal future as rising sea levels are set to wipe their nations away. When planning for an electrified future, I don't think that there is any argument that the voice of these nations should be heard. The challenge is, how do you ensure that they can equitably participate in determining the solutions to a problem that will disproportionately impact these island nations? The Diversity Council of Australia developed the first Inclusion at Work Index survey in 2017 to map the state of inclusion in the Australian workforce. The Inclusion at Work Index has continually demonstrated that inclusion boosts employee well-being, fuels performance, and minimises risk. Employees who form part of inclusive teams experience several benefits, especially in contrast to employees in non-inclusive teams. A similar trend also happens for inclusive managers, and I think we have just heard a wonderful example of that before. And further to that, inclusive organisations. The more inclusive our managers and organisation, the more satisfied, secure, and successful we are. Not only do we see positive outcomes for employees and all participants, we see positive outcomes for teams. So To wrap up, no single disadvantage diversity will achieve more optimal outcomes if they restrict their thinking and efforts to the plight of their single diversity. Everyone has a role to lift everyone else. So let's aim for inclusion and care by design of everyone, everywhere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for Michelle, and thank you very much for Lucy's sharing. This is Chenlan. Here, I want to share some insight from the perspective of IEC SYC Smart Cities, and our system committee. In fact, is to foster the development of standards to help the integration, interoperability, and effectiveness of city systems. We are very small size committee, but in the past 3 years, we have published 16 different standards addressed every year of a smart city. And now we have 35 member countries, including 18 participation member countries and 17 observation member countries. In total, we do have 209 individual members as experts. However, only 35 of those members are women, so which is less than 20% of the total membership. And I am serving as one of the co-convener of City Information Modeling and Urban Digital Twin, which is co-managed by IEC/SYC Smart Cities and ISO IEC JTC1. This is a new joint working group. You may not know what is City Information Modeling or Urban Digital Twin. In fact, they are two emerging and closely linked technology for a smart city. And usually we use CIM for the short name for City Information Modeling, or UDT for the short name of Urban Digital Twin. Both of them are practice of using the interactive digital technology to represent our physical world for simulation and prediction. And usually we use both of those technology when we plan and manage our cities by using a smart way for a sustainable and resilient community building. And now we are conducting a project to understand the gaps of the standards in those areas through a global survey. And at the same time, we are planning to have a project to develop an integrated reference architecture for both city information modeling and urban digital twin, as well as its ontology study. And for this group, we only have 26 members, but they are from 10 different countries. And among 26 members, eight members are women, which is under 1/3 of the group, but it's still larger than the percentage of our whole system committee. So you can see that within our system committee, the representation of women has been gradually improving, especially in the new joint working group. But there is still significant room for growth. I think here for improve the representation of women, yeah, the same with Michelle's mention. NC, national committees do play a very crucial role because at least for us, the system committee of smart city, almost all the members were recommended by national committee. So NC can definitely and actively recruit more women experts and recommend more women experts. They can contact their own professional networks, universities, and industry association to identify and encourage more qualified women to participate in the standards work. Sometimes we discuss gender quotas or targets. Maybe this is one of the strategy we can consider when recruiting experts and the managers for different technical or the system committee. And I think for IEC, as one of the major international standard body, has made some effort to address gender representation. For example, it has established stack, all right, and these in fact can promote the diversity and the inclusions within the standardization activity, especially address geography and gender and the stakeholder. But I think we can do more to empower women's participation in standards work. For example, in addition to providing mentorship, we have example here. We can offer more training and capacity building for women experts. And here I want to highlight for the different technical committee, system committee, maybe for the whole IEC, we can continually promote flexibility, especially flexible participation for women experts, because usually women meet more challenges for balancing our professional and our family responsibility. So offering the flexible participation option, such as by using the virtual meeting and hybrid formats, this can really helpful. For example, for IEC System Committee Smart City, our last preliminary meeting was held in Sydney, where Lucy is in now. And for me, I was not managed to participate in these preliminary meeting face to face. However, the organizer is really good, and they provide a facility to organize hybrid meeting. So I can chair my section, I can participate in this meeting by using Zoom. So here, providing flexible participation for women is very important to allow them to balance their professional contribution as well as their personal or the family responsibility. So I think here another way we can do is highlight some role model. This can showcase some successful women especially in the standardization area, and this can inspire others and demonstrate the value of a woman's contribution. So at the end, I think improving the representation of women in standard organization like in IEC is not only a matter for fairness, but also a strategy in approach for developing more innovative, more inclusive and effective standards. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy and Chenlan. So we will now talk a little bit more about the Global Impact Fund. And so the Global Impact Fund is a tangible embodiment of IEC standards, translating the principles into real-world application. These projects require the involvement of both women and men, as their unique contributions complement each other and ensure a more comprehensive and effective outcome for everyone. Since becoming the first implementing partner of the IEC Global Impact Fund, DIFRA Community Powers team in Kenya has experienced transformation in terms of its diversity. We know that this was something important to the Global Impact Fund Secretariat and Selection Committee, and DIFRA have responded in a way that has been very impressive. We'll now hear from Esther Nazau, a systems engineer at DIFRA first, and she'll be followed by Ray Gorman, the Director of Business Development. Esther?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so currently I'm a systems engineer at DIFRA Community Power, where we basically design solar powered solutions for remote and off-grid communities. And my work is technically to ensure that the solution that we are providing are sound and also meet the needs of the people we serve. So I studied electrical and electronics engineering, and I began my career as a quality control analyst, where I learned the importance of standards and compliance. Then over the time, I transitioned into renewable energy, discovering my passion for sustainable solutions. But getting here hasn't been easy. As Lucy mentioned, the gender gap is just everywhere. As an engineering student, I had the horror of sitting in a class whereby there was just two women representations. And that was just not it. When I transitioned into the working, I remember being the only female representation across multiple departments in a role that in a company that I previously worked in. And this shows you how big of a gap there is and the need to address it. And I believe that through mentorship, training, and opportunities like the one that has been provided to me by GIFA Community Power and IEC, we will be able to grow and contribute meaningfully to the engineering field. I would also want to have a special mention to Ray, who has been an incredible mentor and champion for diversity and inclusion. Currently at DCP, after partnering with the IEC Global Impact Fund, we have seen a shift in our team's diversity, which has brought more women into technical and leadership roles. And this has strengthened our problem solving and project execution. So for instance, when we're designing the solar energy systems for schools and clinics, which are our main focus, you see women bring about valuable perspectives on the usability, maintenance, and the specific energy needs of women and children, which might otherwise be overlooked. Also, beyond the technical benefits, we've also seen that when women are like working in this project in the remote areas, we get to interact with the young girls in these places. You get to see the curiosity in them, the question, get to answer some of their questions, and this opens their eyes onto the possibilities they have out there, things that maybe might have seemed beyond their reach, or they maybe probably didn't even know they had the opportunities like that out there. Also, we've seen that when women are part of engineering and implementing a process, the solution, they better reflect the real community needs, like taking into account the safety, the accessibility, and the efficiency. And this ties into something crucial, which has been talked about a lot, and which is the gender responsive standards. So we know that the standards they shape everything from the safety regulation to technical specification. And when they fail to consider the gender differences, they risk creating systems that don't serve everyone effectively. For example, we know that energy access projects must consider how men and women use power differently, and solar installation safety standards should account for the ergonomic needs that vary by gender. So for this year's theme, which is the for all women and girls, right, equality and empowerment, it deeply resonates with me. And I believe that through projects like the one that we have, the IEC Global Impact Fund, we are not just delivering energy solutions. We are proving that women belong in engineering, in leadership, and in shaping the future of technology. So I believe that as we continue this work, it's my hope that governments, organizations, and industry leaders will prioritize diversity and inclusion, not just because it's the right thing to do. We all know it's the right thing to do, but because it leads to better solutions for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Honestly, I would probably rather just not speak and just have Esther speak for a little bit longer, but I have been asked to speak a little bit today. It's always a little embarrassing for me to stand up here and talk about women in STEM. I get to speak as someone who's faced virtually no barriers to my career, while many of the women I've worked with had to overcome immense bias and systemic challenges just to get their foot in the door often, never mind to progress significantly. Honestly, I often feel like I should sit down and let them speak instead. But I also know that real change requires all of us to take responsibility, including men, to help create a more level playing field. Over the years, I've come to see that being an ally isn't just about good intentions. It's about taking action, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular. One of the easiest and most obvious ways to address gender imbalance is through recruitment. ensuring women have equal opportunities to join and take on leadership roles within our teams, just as Esther has done. But it doesn't stop there. It's just as important to prioritize gender diversification when selecting suppliers, subcontractors, panelists for events like this, and training participants. On the IEC Global Impact Fund projects, we have made a deliberate effort to integrate these principles. While it hasn't transformed the entire industry, its impact on individuals, those who've been inspired to pursue STEM careers or benefited directly, has been profound, just as Esther highlighted. My experience have taught me that advocacy isn't passive. It's not about speaking for women, but amplifying their voices and ensuring their ideas and contributions are heard. And while progress may feel slow, every step we take matters.
Thank you both, Esther and Ray. That was really good to hear and really great to see the efforts that you're making and the influence that you're having where you're working. So we will now open it up. We have time for some question and answers, and I think we already have one in the chat. Okay, so this one is, how do we improve the board level representation? So very few women on the IB and none in senior director position. So we've talked about needing to improve representation more broadly, but how do we make sure that we get women also in those leadership positions? And I'm going to open this if anyone wants to speak to it, and before I start picking on you. So does anyone want to volunteer to answer first?
I'm happy to have a crack at that, Michelle.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's something that we see with all leadership positions. Doesn't matter whether it's in the IEC or whether it's in the corporate world, whether it's in Australia or anywhere else around the world. Until you start building that strong cohort of female junior leaders, middle leaders, and start filling that pipe of strong talent, you won't see that participation of women at the senior levels. I do know that Australia has now a female on the IEC board very, very recently. But having said all that, we can never take our foot off the pedal. We must continue pushing. The topic of quotas is something that is always quite divisive. Some people think that they are the way to go. Other people think it takes away from the merit. I don't think there's a very easy way to do that, but the one thing that we can do is make sure that we are filling people up from, as we see with Fatoumata, in the young professionals all the way up through their careers. And before too long, I'm very confident that we will see more women in very senior leadership roles within the IEC.
Thank you, Lucy. That leads into a question I had, and I was thinking about you, Esther, and you talked about, being in school and being one of very few women. And we know in the engineering is a sector where we know that there is quite an attrition rate. So there might be more women that start, but then we lose them over the years. And if we're thinking about getting women in these top leadership positions, if we're losing them along the way, that means we have a lot less options to get them into those top positions. So Esther, can you think of some of the things that have helped you to stay in the field and some of the things that you think that we can do to help ensure that when women start out in a sector, and especially start in those sectors where they're less likely to be represented, how can we make it more comfortable and more appealing for them to stay in that sector so that they can, assume more leadership positions, but also then be a role model for others?
Yes, I think one of the things that I would say has been really made me keep pushing is having a mentor. And it was a female mentor who had faced similar challenges as I did. So when I felt like, oh, this is getting too much, I would go to them and be like, oh, I faced similar challenge, and this is how I went about it. And they also opened to me, like they told me about opportunities out there that I could explore. And sometimes you look at an opportunity and you are looking at the description and you can see that it's it's kind of targeting a specific gender and all that, and it's kind of discouraging. But they just taught me that you need to put yourself out there, if you don't put yourself out there, you will never know. So just having that mentorship, that push, and also having a strong will, because I'm one person who just won't give up, because I will die with the notion of what would have happened, if I did, and I really don't like that. So I want to do it and know that at least I tried. So just having a strong will and having strong mentorship behind you, it's very key. It pushes you, it helps you see that it's just not you. Other people have gone through it and they were able to, reach the finish line. So you can also make it. Yeah.
Thank you, Esther. So you've talked a lot about, and I think a few of us have talked a lot about the value of mentorship. So if somebody is looking to find a mentor, how do you go about that? Is it uncomfortable to approach somebody? Do you have any recommendations for somebody, especially if there's a young professional or even, a mid-professional that's thinking that they could benefit from a mentor? Any recommendations on how they can go about finding one that would be a good fit for them?
I think one thing that I used to do is I would go to LinkedIn and I would look at people who are in the field that I aspire to be in, and I would literally just message them, because the worst they can do is say no. So I would message them, I would hear back from them, and I realized people out there are actually nice, especially women. They understand the challenges that we face, and some of them are so willing to lend a hand, to guide others beneath them to get out there. So yeah, you just reach out, find somebody who is in a field that relates to what you want to be in, the field that you would want to be in. And that way they will be able to guide you. You'll be able to anticipate some of the challenges that you face. And that way you'll be able to figure out how to go about it. And they will also give you some pointers of how to navigate some of the challenges in case you come across them. So yeah, I always say just reach out to somebody who's in a space that you want to be in to guide you. Yes.
Thanks, Esther. Fatima, did you want to add to that?
Sorry. Yes, I think that going on LinkedIn and trying to find someone, it may be embarrassing for some person. It takes some courage to do that. And for me, I didn't realize that I had a mentor. And he didn't realize neither he was mentoring me. We kind of face this reality, and yes, we are comfortable with it, and we know that you are doing great things. But the mentor program, the mentorship is really something we need. During YP program in Edinburgh, I had a lot of discussions with other YPs, and they were demanding, really. And I'm leading currently a women empowerment project. My YP project for this year is to work on awareness and to build tools for women empowerment in ISC and in technical fields. And one of the requests of my project team was to work on a mentor-mentee program and to also work on a women network. In this network, a young professional, young women will feel comfortable and ask any questions about their careers, about the vision for future, about also leadership. So I think maybe in national committee level, it's maybe here an opportunity to tackle this topic and to work on mentorship program for young people in general, and specifically for young women, I think.
Thanks, Fatima. I love that you had a mentor and didn't realize it, because I think that's something that can happen. And I think Esther and Fatima, as you've talked about, the idea of reaching out can be intimidating. And I think that idea, as you said, I love that you just said, well, they might say no. What's the big deal? And I think, Ray, Damien, I'm not sure your thoughts. And if somebody approaches you for that kind of thing, if you're not able to do it, I'm assuming it's not a big deal if you just say no and maybe you can redirect, or, you know, recognize that somebody can find somebody else. And at times it's just, it's not scary to have that no come to you, I guess. Okay. All right, so we have another question here. So I think we need to work on bringing parents on board. In Ireland, we have done work with schools to encourage women to stay in step, but then they go home and there is not clear understanding of the opportunities and the fear that it's a male-dominated sector. So I think we need to look at how to bring both students and parents along. Have you any ideas on how to do this? Anyone want to speak to that? Well, I will say, so I'm a parent, and I actually have 2 boys. And so not the same, obviously, but I think that recognition of knowing that there are certain gender norms and gender considerations that get factored in, and having to make them aware that it's okay to explore different options. And I think it's a bit interesting because with girls, especially with young girls, there is, and I've read recently, I think that by age 6, there was already an idea that boys are better at computer programming than girls were. And so there's definitely some concerns about how these things get embedded into the system. And there's definitely concerns that, yes, parents have a role to play in that. Teachers also have a role to play. And there was something I read a little while ago that when it came to math, that girls, to be perceived as good as boys, had to not only test well, but they also had to demonstrate they were putting in the effort. So the bar was not as high for boys as it was for girls. So we have these different cultural norms. And it's important that I think, first of all, if you're aware of them, it helps to make you a bit more, hopefully less likely to fall prey to them. But then also recognizing that we need to be looking at this in different ways too. And so there are barriers for women, but then there's also barriers for men. And so that we know that there are, if a young boy shows interest in a field that typically is dominated by women, that is also discouraged. And so I think on both sides, we want to make sure that everyone feels that all of these options are available to them. And so how can we do that? Because I think by showing them examples of it, but also not discouraging them when they bring home an interest, explore it. They're kids, they will go through a number of interests. And so I think, yes, I think being aware of what is happening and some of those stereotypes so that you can recognize, like, well, am I falling prey to a stereotype? And do I need to really reassess why I think that way? I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Yes, here is Chenlan. I'm also a mother of 2 young kids. In Asia, yeah, at least in Hong Kong, in China, in Japan, and South Korea, as well as Taiwan, Singapore, I've observed that young women as well as girls have already have the effect current successful academic performance. However, for women, they are not able to continually have such a success when they join the labor market. I think this is the problem. For example, in my city, the young girl has already have better academic performance in primary school, secondary school, as well as university in both humanities, social science, as well as technology or engineering subject. However, when we look at the society, yeah, and especially the top management or the different domains of labor market, it is still dominated by a large proportion of male managers. So I think here when both of group young people participate in the labor market, I think the local support, especially when women want to enter the phase of get married and then have the next generation. I think this the support for this step to continually balance their family responsibility and professional contribution, I think is really important. Thank you.
Thanks, Chenlan. So sorry, did somebody want to add? Okay, I know we're running close to time. And so I want to answer this question. Why is there a special day for women? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Why do we have International Women's Day? Why is that important?
That's not the easy one.
So
yes, it should be every day, right? It should be every day, as it should be every day. I think the day we will close the gap, we won't need to have the Women's Day anymore. But if we still have the authority gap, the gap to access to work market, to anything, I think having a Women International Day is important. But I wish when my kids will grow, they won't say, oh, mommy, what is this day? We don't need that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, if I can respond as a man here, I totally support Fatimata's response. This should be a transitory thing. It shouldn't be that we forever need this day. It should be a point we get to equality, we don't need it anymore. But it is very easy as a man to feel attacked by efforts around diversity, particularly gender diversity. But it's not about denigrating men, it's about celebrating women. And we need to focus on the positive of it and not the negative.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, so we're going to go through and just have some final thoughts from everyone. And so we'll go in the same order that we've presented. So Fatimata, if you have, a sentence or two that you want to share as a final thought for the group.
Maybe thank you for all the attendees, and let's continue the work on women empowerment. And I know that IEC empowers women, and I'm lucky to work, and I'm proud to work for a company who is really involved in standardizations and who deeply cares about women equality, gender equality, and clearing all diversity gaps. So I'm proud of that, and thank you for having me today. That's it.
Damien?
Oh, what to add? Thanks for the invitation once again, and I totally agree. Maybe one day Women's Day won't be necessary, but it still is. So let's take care of it as long as it's necessary.
Lucy?
Maybe to answer some of those questions before, maybe when we do have a IEC president, maybe we can reevaluate the need to have International Women's Day. But between now and then, we must keep the fight up. I would encourage everybody to be curious and considerate about what barriers any individual may face in participating in any given standardization meeting. Thank you once again.
Shamla?
For different sector, I think here we can work together to improve the representation of women in the standards work. And this is not a matter of fairness, but this is a strategic approach for us to develop a more innovative, inclusive, and effective standards. Thank you.
Esther?
I'd like to say that empowering women in STEM isn't just about equality, it's about unlocking potential. So let's continue to champion for diversity, not just in words, but in action. Thank you.
Right.
I'd like to somewhat reiterate what Lucy was saying earlier of it's all about the small steps we're taking now to get us towards that future. We're not going to do it in sudden leaps. We're going to do it in small steps, and we all have to contribute together.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our panelists. I think this is a really good discussion. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to hear from you and to learn about initiatives you have and ideas that you have. And I also want to say thank you to those who joined this session. I really appreciate your active participation. I think, as you've said, there is a lot more work to do. I noted earlier that we're looking at 5 generations before we reach gender parity. And so I think we do want to accelerate action. We want to take those small steps to make sure that we continue to move forward so that we won't have to wait that long, and so that we can see that progress earlier, and that everyone can benefit from standards, and that society can benefit from being a more equal place for everyone. So thank you again, everyone, for your participation, and have a wonderful day.